And then we welcome any questions, but before we open the floor, we do want to take a moment to introduce some additional panelists that you can ask questions to. Athletic trainers and fellow lifesavers Eric Hall and Kelly Miller. You guys can come up after my name. Athletic Director Leslie Longstutz. And then most importantly, Pablo and Alex Portal.
They're actually doing this talk here for you today. They've done it for the school board. They're going to do it for the athletic directors here in the state, and they're also going to do it for school administrators. And it is really, really hard to relive the probably most traumatic day of their lives all the time, but they do it for us. They do it to make sure that we understand and we know and we can teach and learn about what it is like to be in the situation of an athletic trainer during a catastrophic injury. But I think the wonderful part about it is we're trained for it. This is what we were trained to do, and I think that they are just a wonderful example. So if you guys can just join me in a round of applause. So we have a wonderful panel here of lifesavers, survivors, administrators, just to kind of talk about how, what their role was in their specific situations. I always kid around that Eric Hall and Emily Gaddy are competing for Lifesaver of the Century because they both saved multiple student-athlete lives. And so we are just so grateful for them here at the North Carolina Athletic Trainers Association. So what I'm going to do is have Eric introduce himself and just a really brief synopsis of why you are up for Lifesaver of the Century. You can pass it along, and each person can just introduce yourself, where you work, and then kind of a short snippet about your situation, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then if you guys don't have questions, I will ask them.
So I am Eric Hall. I'm at the trainer at Cary High School. Y'all done a great job. I'm glad things worked out for all the survivors and the athletic trainers having a plan and implementing it and doing it right. I've been involved with a few life-saving events. Which one do you want me to talk about? Do you want
Just
to
list them real quick.
Well, I've had two cardiac events. One was a spectator, one was an athlete. A 15-year-old who had a stroke after football practice, and then a heat illness emergency when we had to do rectal temperature and cool him down. I almost was arrested that day for doing the proper treatment. So that's the quick version.
Yeah, we can go through and then we'll talk a little bit about that.
My name is Kelly Miller. At the moment, for my situation, I was at TW Andrews High School out in High Point. And for my situation, I was in a school-based model where I'm a teacher throughout the day and then I provide athletic training services after school. And the day that this happened, the school nurse was not on campus, so I had to step in as the medical professional that day and help prevent a kid from bleeding out because he cut his leg while doing it. But because of other support in my situation with the athletic director, coaches, activation of the AP, we were able to prevent that kid from bleeding out, possibly. But he is alive today, he's kicking, he's doing just fine.
Great, thank you.
I'm Leslie Longstutz. I'm athletic director at Athens High School. My role, along with Katie, was reviewing our EAP and then making sure that the coaches, practiced over and over. We practiced several times. And then implementing it. Pablo decided. So just curious a little bit. Fun fact, Pablo was my student as well, so he was, yes, much quieter in class, so.
I'm Paulo Ortol. I suppose I am a survivor. Despite my stature, I am no physical specimen, and I definitely was not ready to die for the sport. So I am incredibly thankful to the athletic trainers.
And hello everyone, my name is Alex Ortol, and I am the father of Pablo, and thanks to an athletic trainer, I am the happiest father in the world, so thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any questions for any of our panelists? Nancy has the microphone, and if you do have questions as we go around, just raise your hand and Nancy will bring the microphone over to you. Well, you guys have all had outstanding stories, and obviously all of them include athletic trainers that follow policies and procedures. Eric, can you talk to us a little bit about your situation and how it became a little bit difficult in terms of following the correct policies and procedures?
So around, my event happened in, well, one of the events. The heat illness happened around 2012, and before that, we had many symposiums of how to do ice immersion for any victim who's overheated, to do rectal temperature, to cool them down first, to transport second. And, we had many symposiums and talks about it. And there's always a question, well, what do we do when EMS shows up? And nobody could answer. So I guess I got to deal with it, and cooling the athlete down, his mental status decline. It wasn't a perfect ice immersion because I used a trash bag and we were in a shower with ice. And EMS showed up, the fire department did some sort of vitals and said, "You're doing a great job." It's like, well, good, good. I feel good about myself. And EMS shows up, and I'm thinking, well, we've got about 9 minutes. I need to go at least 15. Unfortunately, the thermometer was in Celsius, so make sure you change it to Fahrenheit. Okay, because that was a little difficult. EMS shows up. They said, well, let's put them in the truck. We have IVs in there. And I yelled at them to bring it in, and nothing happened. They didn't do it. And you could tell they were getting very discouraged when they asked, well, let's move them. And I said, no, we're going to finish the time. And we did finish the time, and, he had a good body shiver of, he's ready to get out. We could tell his temperature dropped. So we removed him. And then the same fireman said something about, I should have, relinquished and let EMS take over. And we're both there to help assist the athlete. It doesn't matter who takes the credit. Let's just do this work together. And then the police showed up. Wanted my name for the report, and I was like, well, what's your name? I'm going to put it in my report. And they can, I did find out later, the police can remove you if you're impeding the EMS or somebody who's treating somebody. That if you're in the way, they can remove you. But I'm assisting and I'm doing the treatment, so, I wasn't doing anything wrong. So that was nothing. I didn't get arrested, so that was good. Since then, we try to get in touch with EMS overall of Wake County to let them know what happened, and so they could kind of inform EMS in our area. And I never spoke to this position over all of EMS, but eventually it got to them, and the policy was changed for Wake County, and I just, Jim Bazluki, told me, he's also an athletic trainer, past president, that the policy was changed for all of North Carolina to let athletic trainers do the rectal temp and let them treat, and once they're done, then EMS can take over. And so I'm glad it finally changed that way. Unfortunately, I went through the raw end of dealing with it, but it turned out well. So,
Thank
any
you.
questions?
No, we appreciate appreciate that, and I think most of the athletic trainers do know that heat stroke is 100% survivable if we're able to drop the body temperature within the first 30 minutes. And so with transport, if it takes 20 minutes to get to the hospital, we've lost valuable time, and there can be, some irreparable damages to organs. So we appreciate you for, fighting for your patients' health and well-being. So Kelly, so tell us a little bit about, was there a question? Absolutely.
It's hard to see the lights.
Sure.
Thank you, first of all, wonderful event. My name is Dwayne Foster. I serve as the District Athletic Director at Orange County Schools. Been here a short time in Orange County. I want to brag a little bit because our own MLA Gaddy's on stage and getting it done, so certainly excited about that. But I'm just staying on the lines of the heat illness component, right? And when you are in spaces and remote spaces where, you mentioned, do your middle schools have athletic trainers, right? And what's beneficial as it relates to having cold tubs, on site, and how that works when you don't have a full-time trainer there to be able to coordinate that or work that, or the training that coaches can receive in an instance where there's a heat illness issue for anybody to address, but I kind of want to touch on that a little bit from that standpoint. Thank you.
I'll start it. So the High School Association has guidelines for recognizing and what to do in emergency for heat illness. The Coaches Clinic in July in Greensboro, it's usually a talk or review for heat illness and other medical emergencies that coaches can attend as well. As having it's beneficial to have some way of cooling them down. I let our coaches know as well, if I am not on site or en route to be on site, to move to a shower, cool them down, use ice bags to cool them down, wet towels and ice to kind of lay over the athlete until I'm there. Anything we can do to cool the athlete down before transport would be beneficial.
There was a study several years ago out of the Indiana University, I believe, don't quote me on that, but they did a tepid water immersion test to see if they got the same cooling results as using cold water, because some of us are places where a hose might be all that we have. And their conclusion was that you can cool using tepid water, provided the water is moving, and you have to keep them in for 30 minutes. So that's another alternative. I know I don't have a whirlpool down at my field house. I just have like a soaking tub. So anytime I have to submerge someone, they get a partner, and the partner gets to walk back and forth to make the water move, so that we're pulling heat off of them with the moving water.
And then I would just say, in terms of, for our schools, our middle schools that don't have athletic trainers on campus, having the proper equipment there is still just as important. Our emergency services don't travel with that equipment, and our hospitals don't have that equipment either. And so if we have that equipment on site, it's able to be used, but again, it's only going to be as good as the policies and the training that we have in place. Otherwise, it just becomes a very expensive sink to rinse out jerseys and coolers and things like that.
Thank you so much for that, and I just want to touch on as well, from a cool tub standpoint, right? Again, that's an inexpensive thing, but it's extremely important and can be used appropriately. But if I'm bringing it out every day, and I'm glad you mentioned about, so I can just fill it with water. I don't necessarily have to have ice, right? I can just start practice on a 90-degree day, have water in it. Is that beneficial? I mean, what are we talking about here from that standpoint?
Put a tent over it.
Put a tent. Here we go. All right, so now we're getting some more. Okay, perfect.
Boiling water's not going to.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But if it, like I have a similar thing where, because I don't have a cold tub, I pull the tub, it lives leaned up against the building during the hot summer days. I put it flat on the ground. I start it at when I start prepping for practice because it takes it a while to fill up. And then I take one of my collapsible tents, I create shade, and then that is what I have to work with.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy, appreciate it.
Yeah, and there's other techniques as well. I think the taco method is a really quick way of using a tarp, putting the patient in the middle of the tarp, rectal thermometer, and then pouring ice and water over them, and then holding the edges of it so that they are submerged in that if you don't have one readily available, particularly like if it's like cross country or on an off-site facility where you don't necessarily have that. But I think the biggest issue is having a plan. Actually talking to the coaches and saying, if this happens, what are you going to do? If you don't have a cold tub, how are you going to manage that? You do have a cold tub, but we don't have water next to it. How are we going to manage it? If we don't have ice, how are we going to manage it? And having those conversations before you actually have the incident occur. Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah. And this is for anyone on the panel, it doesn't just have to be you.
Hi, my name is Mike Issa. I am an athletic trainer as well, and very proud to be. So this was a fantastic presentation and very well done. My question is, we have clear limitations. I think we're trying to get legislation passed here, and we'd all like to see athletic trainers at every high school in North Carolina. What do we see the barriers to this being, and how do we address those barriers with state legislators? What should we be saying and pointing out to them to address those barriers?
I might hand that over to the lovely lady in pink in front of you. Ashley Long is our governmental affairs co-chair, and she has been working tirelessly to help legislators understand the value of athletic trainers, why we need them, and how we can make sure that A, there's no legislation that goes in that keeps us from doing the things that we need to do, but also positive legislation to help promote safety for our student athletes. So what can we do, Ashley?
We have until 10, right?
We're going for 8:15. I want people to go to bed, it's Friday, good night,
I think the legislation that y'all described is, that would be ideal. And of course be, instant, and we would see those athletic trainers spread across the state quickly. But it's a challenge because it would be a funded mandate, which is always hard to get past. And depending on the economic climate and, politics, it's hard. So there's other ways that we try to improve access to care and access to athletic trainers. And I also love the presentation, and you guys saw the maps of the disparity between the Tier 1 and the Tier 3 counties. And I think there's a lot to that when it comes to healthcare access, not just in athletic training, but across the board. And so engaging healthcare systems like they have been, our model as our profession has evolved has gone away from a school-based, coach-based type of model into a healthcare model. And so now a majority of our athletic trainers are employed by healthcare systems and are integrated into those systems. And when you have a competitive healthcare market, that really helps you get athletic trainers into schools. And when you don't, you have to find other ways. And, related to that is us being able to get reimbursed for what we do. And, not just showing our value through a salary, but, we do a lot of skills that other providers are reimbursed for. We're trained to do those skills just like they are, and we work in settings in which they're getting reimbursed. And so that's one avenue that we try to go down to try to get treated fairly in that arena. That would help because it's easier to hire somebody when you can bill for their services. And it would, not that we'd be billing in the high school, but it's all related. Other things are protecting our ability to practice at the highest level of our scope. So we practice under a license just like other healthcare providers. and sometimes that license gets challenged, and so we have to defend it. And then, you know, there's, just like in any business model, there's economics of healthcare. And so people want more parts of the market, and, you know, on the ground, we work really well together, but sometimes things in policy get placed where it's a disadvantage for us. And so we're a small profession. There's 1,900 athletic trainers in North Carolina. We're misunderstood. Our name stinks, and nobody understands what we do. So there's an uphill battle, but I think our good relationship with physicians can help us. I think more and more these news stories, like we saw about Pablo, that's good publicity so that people know that we are. And then the rates of athletic trainers at schools are so much higher now than they were when we came through school. So every kid at Orange County High School knows what an athletic trainer is, or Atkins High School. We live in rural eastern North Carolina, so parents don't know the difference because there's nobody there to tell them the difference or to show them. So I think it's like everything, it's multifactorial, but I think legislatively protecting our license, making sure legislators know things like this, see these types of presentations, gaining reimbursement and fair and equal access to patients is important, and so we work on all those fronts.
So also, because Emily and I have taken our show on the road, it is also a grassroots effort to inform school boards and school administrators. Athletic directors oftentimes know exactly what we do. School board members don't. And that was one of the things that was very evident when we presented to the school board. We're having school board members coming up afterwards going, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Or, you were at Atkins? You're in my school? Like, they had no idea that the hospital provided an athletic trainer to all of the schools. So some of it is grassroots on our part, trying to hit the people that can help us make noise, going, we need this.
So I'm Jocelyn Son. I want to work with Food Services at Duke. I work with Mike Issa and can attest to the benefits of doing our training that we do with our outreach schools and really rehearsing for when those things are necessary. So thank you for participating on those rehearsals and taking them to heart, no pun intended. But so I have also known first responders who are, you know, doing these things out of, you know, a sense of responsibility. Like their schools seem to not have the budget or whatever. They don't have an ATC. Obviously, it'd be preferable to have the ATC. That would be so much better for the school district. But then you've got these first responders who are meeting some requirements, whatever they are. But is there any parallel effort, like as a, you know, for schools, say, that aren't able to provide the ATCs to enhance or, you know, broaden the education required or provided to the first responders? You know, to, like, in reality, like, how do you, our schools are saying, like, we don't have that in our budget, or we can't do it. How do you bridge the gap where you'd rather have an ATC there, but that might not happen? How do you make it better?
And we have a wonderful representative from the North Carolina High School Athletics Association.
Thank you, Nina. My name is Ken. I work with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. And so, Mike, I'm gonna take a stab at your question, and just to let everyone know that this past Tuesday, there was a memorandum of understanding signed between the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and the state school board. And so basically what has happened right before our very eyes, actually over the last year, is that because of some legislation that came down the pipe, that this memorandum of understanding was necessary. And so now the State Board of Education is actually the go-to in terms of who do you talk to, who do you reach out to, the members of the State Board of Education. I would say this to you in all fairness, that it needs to be done in a very professional way, not an accusatory way, in an encouraging way. And the reason is because not only do these people, the State Board of Education, address the issue of athletic trainers in secondary schools and public secondary schools, but they also oversee first responders. And so it's the State Board of Education that would set the standard of education for first responders. It's the State Board of Education that would be able to move forward this notion, this positive notion of athletic trainers in all of our schools. And so what I'm telling you is that the game has changed, and it changed on Tuesday of this week. Thankfully, the State Board of Education has given the North Carolina High School Athletic Association the nod to be the overseer of interscholastic athletics in this state for the next 4 years. We're optimistic that will be renewed every 4 years, but the game has changed. So the message that I want to clearly communicate is reach out to members of the North Carolina Board of Education. Those are the people that their phones need to ring, their emails need to receive messages, because from them, then they will in turn reach out to the legislators, that if legislation is needed, that can take place. But the State Board of Education is the group that can change the game.
I think that's really valuable information, and the Board of Education also gets information from the Department of Health and Human Services, and so really one of the things that we're charged with as the North Carolina Athletic Trainers Association is making connections and reaching out to individuals, because first and foremost, almost every single person is either a parent, grandparent, auntie, uncle, somebody in their family plays sports, and they want to make sure that those students are safe in everything that they do. We also want to make sure that they're educated in the differences between us. And so that's why these lovely women have been knocking on every single door, trying to make sure that everybody understands, so that as we're having these conversations and as, things are happening, we have amazing examples. I mean, I can't tell you how wonderful Pablo and his family has been. They have been at the School Board Association conference, with us. They are here today. It's not a short journey with gas prices these days for them to come out and support us, but for people to understand these real stories and the real impact that athletic trainers have, I think that's when we're going to push the needle, because at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. Every organization wants the same thing, and that's safety for the students of North Carolina. I know we don't have a ton of time, it's like 8:07, but because of their long trip across the state, I just wanted to get just a little bit of insight from Pablo's dad, who hasn't had an opportunity to talk. I know your wife has been the one on a lot of the TV shows, and of course Pablo, and sharing what does this mean to you, and as a parent, what do you think you can do, or what can parents do in order to push the envelope and the needle in this situation?
So I think in reality, in my view, the most important factor is awareness. The moment that the parents and families are aware of the situation and aware of the need of athletic trainers, the push for a change in policy for athletic trainers to be present in every sport event will be obvious. In that scenario, I do understand now, but I understand thanks to this event with a happy ending, but are other parents aware? And is there any way that we can make them aware of this thing? Needless to say that, as you have mentioned, we all want the safety of our students and our kids. But I don't think, I do think that we need to do an extra step to make sure that all parents are aware of the need of athletic trainers. When we talk to other parents, sometimes they don't even know, like, okay, so who is this? What do they do? why are they there? And I think that the story that we can share, and that's why we think that this is our moral commitment. It is not only our appreciation for the work we do, but it's a moral commitment to the rest of the community, is to come to these places and spread the news of what you all are doing. So I'm terribly thankful, but I'm also thinking this as an opportunity to spread the news that there is something that needs to be done, and we're here to help.
And we so appreciate your time.
No, thank you so much. It is our pleasure. We'll drive anywhere. We'll walk if we have to.
We may have to. Up to $5. We'll look at bicycles. Pablo, do you have anything to share with us as we're wrapping up?
Well, to touch on that, I would say that nothing will get people more involved than knowing that something like this can affect them. And like my mom said many times, we never thought that anything could ever happen to something like that could happen to me, because I've always been relatively healthy. And the sooner people realize that it's random, it can happen to anybody, then I think the sooner people will be more involved. And also, like my mom said, we didn't really know who the athletic director was, what their job was. So when people realize that this is an issue that affects everybody, then I think that level of awareness will definitely spread to a higher degree. And on a personal level, I have to agree with my dad. I'm incredibly thankful. This is a rare occurrence, but I'm incredibly thankful to Katie and Coach Long. But I do think that I'm in a position where if people see that someone who's relatively normal like me is now a year later not on the forefront, but going to all these events and sharing my story, then I think it makes it a lot more relatable. So that's my main goal in doing all these things.
Yeah, let me add something else to it. I would like to I saw a couple of slides before with different percentages between first responders and athletic trainers. And it is important to understand the data and the evidence behind it, but I think that whenever we translate those percentages into the life and safety of the students, that impacts what you see as a father or as a mother. And to me, in reality, I didn't see those numbers. I see lives, and that's when you start worrying, like, what are we doing in order to make sure that those kids are safe? And we have to do whatever we have in place to do it. And it's true, there are economic components that we have to consider, but those economic components may quickly disappear as soon as parents understand the importance of having an athletic trainer in our sport events.
100%. And so you can just pass it over to Leslie over here. So from an athletic director or somebody who's in a position to really make change in terms of what happens at your school and your athletic department, what are some things that are important to you, and how do we, once again, push the needle towards other athletic directors getting more athletic trainers? Because you guys clearly have a wonderful model that was set up for something like this, and not all athletic directors have that.
Right, so we always start our seasons out with a big coaches meeting. And we're pretty clear, we were very clear on what the expectations were. And our campus is situated extremely spread out. So fortunately for us, we have 3 AEDs, one that stays with the athletic trainer and then one at the office and one at the stadium. I'm not exactly sure, looking back, Katie and I've talked a lot over this past year about all this. I'm not sure what would have happened if Katie would have been there. I mean, I know Dylan did what he was supposed to do, but I feel like we're educated on a, we just kind of put not a literal band-aid, but we kind of get the ball rolling, and then AT's like sweep in and essentially save the day. And I really honestly don't know. I'm so thankful that she was where she was and not at the stadium, because we did go back on our debrief and we parked where she would have been if she would have been at coverage 20 minutes later. And we drove the golf cart all the way up, parked it, and I said, "Are you really going to run that?" And she said, "Yeah." So her and Jonathan took off.
and it was literally 3 minutes. But the point is if Katie wasn't there, like our middle schools don't have an athletic trainer. My athletic trainer now got a phone call last year. Someone who was playing on our campus in middle school hurt their arm or their leg, and she went down there just last week. One of our PE students passed out on the track. They called Nicole, and she went down there. So if we don't have these people on campus during the day or in the evening with the appropriate EAPs, and they have to communicate with their athletic directors and athletic trainers. If your athletic director is not listening to them, go knock down their door. They need to listen to you. We have had this conversation how many times? I mean, you've got to get in somebody's ear. They need to listen to you because you're the professional. You know what needs to be done in these situations. But Katie and I went over it time and time again and rehearsed. But that you've got to be, from our standpoint, you're the most valuable person that I have on my campus. I feel like I just kind of, write some schedules out and I don't really do Band-Aids either. Like if something's wrong, go see them. No, I don't. But really though, if your athletic trainer or your athletic director or administrator are not listening to you, just keep climbing. Central office, if they don't listen, just keep going. Because you're very, very important. And I don't know, I don't know what we would have done with that. I mean, I don't, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And this goes to her, to the three of them. Some of our grassroots efforts are making changes. Because of the school board meeting, Leslie was also there. 2 of the school board members from Forsyth County stayed after to talk to us, to talk to Leslie, to talk to Pablo and his mom. And I feel like we can take full credit for it. I'm going to. Tonight we're going to. But they purchased 95 AEDs for the school system. That's a win in our books. So it's working, slow. It's working.
And then last but not least, of course, Kelly. Leslie talked a little bit about how the athletic trainer sometimes gets pulled to like middle schools. You obviously got pulled out of your classroom to go assist. What is the role of athletic trainers that are school-based that are there all during the day, and how does that help the entire student body?
So I hate to foreshadow, but this week in my class, whenever this happened, I was teaching emergency medical response, and one of the topics was controlling bleeding. And one of the days I was teaching the class that we were practicing, and then I hear over the walkie, hey, we need 911 to the gym. And on that day, the school nurse wasn't there, so I acted, and I told the classes that they had me back. Unfortunately, they were unsupervised for a minute, but I took off out the classroom. I ran down to the gym, and when I got to the gym commons area, I noticed that there was a window was broken. But before I say all this, guys, we know how some students can be, and we know how high schoolers sometimes let emotions get the best of them. But in all situations when we are providing health care, it is not always to an athlete. We provide health care to a lot of different people. Your situation, somebody in the stands. My situation was just a student. When I walked into the gym commons area, I noticed the window was broken, and I just noticed a trail of blood going down into the gym, which was also the same path to get to the athletic training room. When I got in there, the athletic director was kind of helping support the child while he was on the treatment table, and he had, I don't know the day, so he used a belt as a tourniquet, and he just had it on the table. And the other steps to prevent bleeding is apply pressure, elevate. There's a lot of other measures, but preventing the child from going into shock, trying to support them and be like, hey, we are here, reassure them, just to make sure that they're comfortable. But while I was going down there, the first thing I saw was just a kid on the table, a lot of blood. I grabbed some gloves on PPE, of course, and a Gatorade towel, and I started applying pressure. And we grabbed an incline board, shoved it up under his leg, elevated it, just to try to control the bleeding as much as possible. And EMS has already been called, they were on the way, so we were there for about not even 10 minutes. while we were doing all of our life-saving measures to prevent bleeding. And when they got there, I pressured the whole time. We got him on the gurney, got him out to the ambulance, and then they took over applying pressure. They actually used a tourniquet, a legit tourniquet, before we even took him to the ambulance. And the next day, just out of curiosity, I went to the principal. I said, "Hey, how's he doing? Have you heard anything?" And he said his grandma called, or he called grandma, and said that if it wasn't for the measures that we took or what we did to control the bleeding, that he could have possibly bled out because of the laceration that he had on his leg. So I've been messaging him through Facebook and everything, and kind of checking on him about every other month just to see how he's been doing. Because as an athletic trainer, once you have that relationship with an athlete, you always have that relationship with them. And I think that's a big thing from our standpoint, because we don't just see them in the classroom, we see them on the athletic field. And out of all the people at the school system, or throughout the school, we probably have one of the better relationships with the students, which is awesome. But he, like I said earlier, he's doing great now. He had about 55 stitches in his leg, and it was huge.
I'm glad to share the picture.
Yes, I have a good picture. But Emily, Katie, thank you all for allowing me to present this story. This is, because it wasn't with athletics, I really haven't had the chance to share it as much, but it is still a life-saving story.
No, it definitely is, and we all know with femoral artery, I mean, you can bleed out in less than 10 minutes. And so your actions were very important that day, but also when we looked at stressed areas and health, access to healthcare, sometimes it's 45 minutes to get to a level 1 trauma hospital. Sometimes you have to Medi-Flight to get the treatment that you need. And so who's there in that moment to stabilize the patient, to get them to those situations? And that's what's really important. And so when we think about athletic trainers, a lot of times it's just on the football field, and clearly Pablo was not on the football field. And it's just that kind of view of athletic training, but it can be in the classroom, it can be in the gymnasium with an incident, it can be anything, and even as simple as some of these distressed areas, these kids are not getting physicals, or they don't have healthcare access except for the athletic trainer who's doing their blood pressure. How are we preventing, diabetes and long-term injuries and promoting wellness and all of those things? And so I just really, from the bottom of my heart, as the president of the Athletic Trainers Association, you guys are fantastic, you're amazing, you support us so well, you are obviously heroes, and you guys too, because you're a survivor, but right now you're a hero to me, because you guys are making it happen. You're talking to people about your stories, you're sharing what's going on, and that is what's going to move that needle, and that's what's going to make people understand that this isn't just ice, tape, stretching, and those kind of things, but this is really life-saving stuff. And I can't thank every single person, because I know it's a Friday night, you probably have way better things to do than, hang out here and listen to research and topics and stuff, but the fact that you took the step to learn and to understand and to talk to other people and to really, hopefully fight for us when you're out there is really special and really important to us. So I just want to conclude, I know I went a little over, but thank you guys for all that you've done. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for being panelists. Thank you for being my road show.
I'm going to say our email address is up there. If you enjoyed the presentation, tell your friends. Emily and I are available for parties and events.
We do have this recorded, and so what I guess one of the questions is what do we do now is we share this information. We get it out there. We have a YouTube channel. We're going to be posting a lot of our talks, a lot of things out there. If you have friends, legislators, PTAs, I always say I'm a men's lacrosse athletic trainer. Nothing is more effective than a lax mom. And I will stand by that 100%. So if you have those parents that are very vocal, very involved, share the video with them. Let them know what's going on. Share, our Facebook page. Share our Instagram, because we're going to really be promoting a lot of the things that we've done. This is National Athletic Training Month. We're really excited about it. March is when we celebrate athletic trainers, celebrate all the things that they've done, celebrate the lives that have been saved because of them. And so thank you for being here and celebrating with us today. Have a wonderful evening, drive safely. And you can take pictures. If you have any questions, we'll be here to talk, but I do want to get you guys home at some point. We can talk about this all night.